Well, there does seem to be a bizarre spate of top-level Democrats with weird kids. Now, listen, parents are not always responsible for the sins of their children. I have 3 children. Soon I will have 4, with the help of God. I assume that sometime in their life they'll do something I don't approve of because that is the way of the world. You try to raise your kids the best that you can, and then, whatever sort of happens, happens. But there is a very strange thing that seems to be happening with top House Democrats where and one top Senate Democrat, where their kids end up rioting with Antifa, which seems like a pretty weird thing to be happening. The latest example of this is, according to National Review, the son of House Minority Whip Katherine Clark, Democrat of Massachusetts, was arrested in Boston for assaulting an officer and defacing a monument during an Antifa riot on Saturday night. Clark's son, Riley Dowell, 23, was detained by Boston police for allegedly spray painting No Cop City and ACAB, that would be All Cops Are Bastards, on the Parkman Bandstand Monument in the Boston Common. Similar language was recently used by Antifa activists in Atlanta who were rioting. While attempting to place Dell under arrest, Boston police reported that protesters encircled the small detachment of law enforcement and struck an officer. During the arrest of Jared Dowell, a group of about 20 protesters began to surround officers while screaming profanities through megaphones on the public street, causing traffic to come to a standstill. While interfering with the arrest of Jared Dowell, an officer was hit in the face and could be seen bleeding from the nose and mouth, according to the Boston Police Department. Dell was charged with assault by means of a dangerous weapon, destruction or injury of personal property, and damage of property by graffiti/tagging. He is expected to be arraigned in Boston Municipal Court. Those Antifa protests were apparently sparked in Boston following a fatal police shooting of a University of Massachusetts Boston student, Syed Faisal, in December 2022. During that particular incident, the person who was shot by the Massachusetts police, he approached the police with a short sword. They tried to then shoot him with a sponge round, which is a non-lethal round, and then they had to resort to lethal force. Quick rule of thumb, folks, do not attack officers with a short sword. It just does not go amazing for you. Clark released a statement Sunday afternoon confirming that Dell, who is transgender and now goes by the name of Riley, was arrested. Last night, said Clark, my daughter was arrested in Boston, Massachusetts, which comes as a shock on 2 fronts. 1, that this person's son is actually their daughter, and 2, that their kid was arrested with Antifa. I love Riley. This is a very difficult time in the cycle of joy and pain in parenting. There's definitely a way to put it. A difficult time in the cycle of joy and pain in parenting. This will be evaluated by the legal system. I am confident in that process. Now, you'll remember that this is the same House Democrat. Again, this is a top House Democrat, the House Minority Whip, who just a couple of years ago said that she remembered her middle child, this would be Jared, nay Riley, now Riley, waking up with nightmares about climate change. Here is Katherine Clark talking about this not all that long ago.
Let me tell you what it means to me, coming in as a different generation. I remember my middle child waking up with nightmares over concern around climate change.
Well, why? What did you do? I mean, seriously, that is a what did you do kind of thing, because normally kids wake up with nightmares because they're thinking about death. Something bad's going to happen to their parents, or they saw something in a movie and it was super scary, or they read something in a book and it was really, really upsetting. They don't wake up with nightmares about climate change unless you are scaring them or exposing them to things they should not be thinking about climate change. Because guess what? Your son, who is not in fact your daughter, is not going to be killed by climate change. Your son would have been fine. Other facts to consider here. It is very odd how many top-level Democrats, how many Hollywood folks, how many people who are sort of the elites in blue society have trans, quote-unquote, children. Very odd, isn't it? We have reached, it seems, a genetic bottleneck that only affects specific groups of children in specific parent groups. It's very odd. It must just be a weird evolutionary quirk. It must be that suddenly Darwin has reached its apotheosis. Like, I don't know how this happened. You know, for nearly all of human history, people who suffer from gender dysphoria were a percentage of a percentage. A tiny, tiny percentage of the population suffered from gender dysphoria. Now, you've got a vast bevy of kids who are suffering from gender dysphoria or who are claiming that they are a member of the opposite sex, but only in very specific areas, only at our nation's top colleges, only if they are the kids of top Democratic legislators, or if they're the kids of Hollywood moms and dads. Very strange, wouldn't you say? It does raise some serious parenting questions, like maybe you're doing a bad job. Maybe overall, you're not talking about just a weird confluence of events. Maybe it is that you are doing an insufficient job of teaching your kids the things they need to know. Again, not every kid is going to fall close to the tree. Not every apple falls close to the tree. But when you are teaching your kids that climate change is going to kill everyone, and then your kid has nightmares And when you're teaching your kids that boys can be girls, and then your boy says that he is a girl, I gotta say, it feels like A and B are connected just a little bit. And of course, as I mentioned, this is not the only top Democrat who has had a kid arrested during a riot. You'll remember that back in 2017, Linwood Michael Cain, the son of Virginia Senator and former vice presidential candidate Tim Kaine, was one of 5 protesters arrested after allegedly disrupting a pro-Donald Trump rally inside the Minnesota State Capitol this back in 2017, according to St. Paul police spokesman Steve Linders. Cain was charged by prosecutors in St. Paul with fleeing on foot, concealing identity in a public place, obstructing the legal process by interfering with a peace officer. Now again, there are issues with parents who are right-wing raising their kids in weird ways and that having effects. But if you're talking about kids who are being arrested rioting with Antifa and also saying they are members of the opposite gender, perhaps the problem is that you're not providing the roles and rules that are necessary to raise a healthy child. Get to more on this in just 1 second. First, this year, if it's one of your goals to do business with companies that don't hate your guts, check out Pure Talk. Pure Talk is the antidote to woke wireless companies. It is proudly veteran-owned, employs a U.S.-based customer service team, and absolutely refuses to spend money on networks that hate your guts. Not to mention, Pure Talk's service is excellent. They're one of the largest networks in the country. You get blazing fast data, talk, and text for as low as $30 a month. That is probably half what you're paying for Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Switch on over to Pure Talk in as little as 10 minutes. Keep your phone and your phone number. Your first month guaranteed risk-free. Try it. If you're not completely happy with the service, you'll get your money back. I've been using Pure Talk for a couple of years now. I use it for all my business calls. It is excellent this year. Make it a goal to support companies who support you. Go to puretalk.com, enter promo code Shapiro, save 50% off your first month. That's puretalk.com, promo code Shapiro. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. Again, their coverage is excellent. They use the same tower network as one of the big guys. So what exactly do you have to lose? The answer is nothing. Head on over to puretalk.com, use promo code Shapiro, save 50% off your very first month. Also, you may have noticed that used car prices are dropping, but before you walk into the dealership, you need to check out CarZing. CarZing is completely changing the way you buy a car online. By partnering with credit agencies, lenders, and over 25,000 dealers nationwide, CarZing provides you with everything you need before you set foot into a dealership. You can instantly pre-qualify online without affecting your credit score, get instant financing details, including what your down payment would be, your monthly payment, term, APR, puts you several steps ahead of all the other buyers out there. Once you find the right car at your ideal budget, all you have to do, bring your saved deal voucher with you to the dealership and finalize your next ride. It makes it really, really easy. No going to the lot and being given the runaround by the folks at the used car dealership. Instead, you can find out exactly what you're paying for and what you want to pay for the thing online. Even if you're not in the market for a new car, you should check out CarZing anyway. It's like window shopping. Just poke around, see what's available in your area. Visit carzing.com/Ben today. Skip the guesswork. Find the best deals near you. That is carzing.com/Ben, carzing.com/Ben to get started. Again, I'll say for the third time, it is possible that you do all the right things and your kid ends up the wrong way. But when you teach your kid a thing and then your kid does the thing, that one is kind of on you. And I mention this because there does seem to be an attempt now to treat parenting as though it is a form of virtue signaling to the rest of the world. It is not about raising your child healthy. It's about demonstrating to the rest of your blue check friends that you are doing the right things in their eyes. You are training your children properly as good little left-wingers. And this takes some very strange forms. For example, the New York Times has a piece over the weekend by a person named Heather Kay. The piece is titled, "China Helped Raise My American Kids, and They Turned Out Fine." Quote, "When COVID was raging across the world a couple of years ago, I came across a picture online of an American woman wearing a t-shirt that proclaimed, 'I refuse to co-parent with the government,' a response to perceived government overreach regarding school mask mandates. I laughed out loud. My own kids were, in a way, co-parented by the Chinese government. So first of all, anytime you are claiming with pride that your kids are co-parented by the government, you are doing something wrong. It is not the government's job to co-parent your kids. This is a big enough problem in the United States. We have a vast bevy of people who seem to believe that the government ought to play daddy in the sense that it ought to provide all of the resources necessary to explore yourself. And also, the government ought to play mommy in the sense of providing you the emotional comfort of accepting all of your behavior. This is why you see so many people who want the Supreme Court to give the moral imprimatur to their personal behavior. Because they want the government to be mommy in the sense that it makes them feel good about themselves. And they want the government to be daddy in the sense that it brings home the bacon. But back to this person writing about how the Chinese government did an amazing job co-raising their kid. My work in the fashion industry took my husband and me to Shanghai in 2006, where we spent the next 16 years and started a family. In China, government co-parenting begins in the womb. Well, I mean, it kind of begins in like killing kids in the womb. They've killed tens of millions of children in the womb, or forcibly sterilized millions of women in China over the course of the last half century. People in China are still legally barred from determining the gender of their unborn babies unless medically necessary because of a history of sex-selective abortions, according even to this columnist. And those sex-selective abortions became necessary specifically because China said you could only have one kid, and Chinese people apparently generally wanted boys more than girls, which is why you now have a surplus of boys over girls. That number's in the millions, which is a serious problem for China, its economy, and foreign policy. But, says this columnist, as foreigners, we were exempt from such rules. But I had to accept that my growing belly had become community property, subject to unsolicited rubbing and sidewalk commentary, and that restaurants would refuse to serve me cold beverages. Chinese people ascribe medicinal properties to simple hot water, rooted in hygiene concerns and the belief that it maintains a healthy balance in yin and yang. I dreaded the earful I would get each time I ordered an iced latte that was usually served with a warm smile. In 2008 and 2010, we delivered 2 healthy daughters in Shanghai and faced the choice of all expatriate parents in China, between pricey international schools and enrollment in local schools overseen by the government and with an immersion in Chinese culture and values. We weighed the pros and cons of the Chinese route and the cons. The cons apparently were exposure to Communist Party propaganda and potential social isolation of being foreigners in a group of Chinese students, and they took the plunge. Our stringent government co-parent quickly made its presence felt. The girls' Chinese kindergarten teacher lectured us on everything, including how many hours our daughters should sleep, what they should eat, their optimal weight. Each morning, all the students performed calisthenics in straight rows and raised China's red flag while singing the national anthem. Classroom windows were usually kept open to increase air circulation and prevent contamination by airborne illnesses even during the winter. We sometimes felt as if our children were on loan to us for evenings and weekends to be delivered back to school each weekday. Over time, though, the benefits kicked in. Constantly served up moral, history, and culture lessons on pulling together for the sake of the Chinese nation, our girls came home discussing self-discipline, integrity, and respect for elders. With school instilling a solid work ethic and a total drive for academic excellence, my husband and I didn't need to push the girls to complete homework. The shame of letting their teachers and classmates down was enough to light their fires. And this piece continues, basically talking up the joys of China and the wonders of Chinese parenting. They say there's no shortage of condemnation directed at China's Communist Party by critics in the United States, much of it justified. But my family's experience in China taught us that immersion in a culture with different answers to everyday questions alters how one sees the world. Practices that used to seem clearly right or wrong took on complexity and dimension. So I see that they're very much in favor of social solidarity and national indoctrination so long as it's coming at the behest of the Chinese government. As an American parent in China, says this columnist, I learned to appreciate the strong sense of shared values and of people connected as a nation. Parenting, like governing, is an imperfect art. Priorities must be set, tough choices made. There's never been a more crucial time for us to learn from one another and build new bridges across the street, nation, and world. Attention to the common good is a fundamental value I seek in an American government co-parent. So they want the government to now inculcate the idea of a common good like the authoritarian Chinese government. And then you wonder why the odd combination of social libertinism crammed down by a top-down government is so attractive to the left. You wonder why that's happening? By the way, the side effects of all this can be seen in everything from the rampant rate of LGBTQ identification that is wildly exceeding what it has ever been in human history. It should be noted, by the way, sometimes you'll hear people make the idiotic argument, this is like left-handedness. So for generations, people suppressed left-handedness in the population. They said, well, it's bad for kids to write with their left hand. And so people were taught to write with their right hand, right? And then that stigma went away. People started to write with their left hand. And over the course of 60 years, the population of left-handers in the United States went up by about 300%. The population of transgenderism in the American population is now increasing at tens of thousands of percent in certain centers of our nation's population. That has nothing to do with the natural movement of genetic drift. That has everything to do with social contagion, and a social contagion for which the left demands both parental and government green lighting. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We will be getting into Democrats proposing a program of nationwide rent control, plus a big fight breaking out in the House over whether Democrats should be allowed to appoint people like Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell to the intelligence panel. Republicans are saying, nope. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click the link in the description and join us.